start streaming. Wait for a little bit. All right. Hello, everybody. Hey, guess what? It is Saturday, September 7th, 2019. We're a little bit late because Ed evidently forgot how to punch buttons on a phone, so he showed up quite a bit later. He claims the system was blocking him, but I think he forgot which button was which. So without further ado, hopefully he can remember how to talk. Speak, boy, speak. Come on, Ed.
Thanks a lot. Thank you all for joining us today. Anyhow, it's been one of those interesting last couple of weeks that I've been going through in and out of ICU and other medical issues still. And it is really frustrating because when I was in ICU, I had my house robbed. And the only one who could have robbed my house is somebody that personally knows where I am at because they knew exactly what they were going after. Exactly. And so that's the one thing that gets to me about people, that people don't realize how this your elected and public employee system works compared to the fantasy the average man and woman lives in today's society, as you call it. And remember, society is based off of the British government. We didn't have society that was named in this country until the British came here. And so this is the one thing, is learning what real history is compared to the fantasy that most people live by. And we are living by a lot of fantasies in this country. So, but anyhow, it is really frustrating that, that these people do what they do. And, karma. That's the only thing I have to believe in because I don't believe in the other side. So, but anyhow, I want to get into the property rights and stuff. Now, we've been posting up, and we're going to get some more stuff on no.org and trackers on your lawful right to own your soil. And it's learning the correct terminology of how to own your soil. And that's the point that people have got to realize what terminology means and what the structure really means about owning your soil. You have to claim your soil. You have to own your soil. That's like claiming your child. And if you don't claim your child to own your child, you don't own your child. And that's like under Title 18, 241, means Section 241. This is like when the federal public employees come after you. And remember, all public employees are under the Washington, D.C. Vatican structure. And people will try to say, oh, no, that's not true. It is true. It's a real fact. That's Title 18, 3002, a corporation. And dealing with the bankruptcy, and I've been dealing with this with elected and public officials lately here again. And it's like, here's the law. And when it comes to the bankruptcy, we are not bankrupt in this country. The British government went bankrupt to we the people, the natives. Nobody else in the world, and that's why immigrants and, I don't know what they call registered church members as well as elected and public employees have to reimburse that charge. And people don't realize that elected and public employees are indebted, well, because of the 1933 Bankruptcy Act. They ended up having debt notes to pay off their salaries. And see, that's the one thing that people don't comprehend, that when it comes to their salaries, okay, it's not paid by your donations to your city and council. And that's the one thing to your city and council, I do recommend that you do find out if they are registered, certified. And the other point, remember, they are a nonprofit agency that's committing fraud. And so when they're a nonprofit agency, any nonprofit is committing fraud. Because you can't write off debt to debt. And believe me, they do that. And so when you don't look at the real history of how these things happen, this is the problems that we have. This is what the children are, looking at the future of the problems that they're going to have, being not properly educated. And this is the one thing that we could go back to. And when you have the problems with elected and public employees, this follows under 8 USC 2441, war crimes. because they're committing war on you if you are bloodline native or civilian. And I had to correct myself because if you do say sovereign citizen, and I've done that in the past like a fool, because I was one of those people that were learning at the same time as everybody else was learning until you realize and what you're reading, and you realize that you're reading stuff that is not true and accurate because you've got all these attorneys out there throwing out all this stuff to throw you off so that way they can torment you and control you. And remember, if you hire a lawyer, you give up your constitutional rights. If you hire an attorney, you give up your constitutional rights. And you have to know when you go to court, you have to file under Article 3 courts. And that means it's your responsibility to find out if they are licensed, bonded, insured. And if they're not, and if they don't have a real accurate oath, they cannot hear your case. And your case is supposed to go to a jury trial, not to a judge. Judges are not the court. And once you start realizing judges are not the court and that you have to go in front of a jury of your peers. Now, that means a grand jury or a jury, 6 or 12, because the 6, and if you go to a jury of 12 in the corporation, you have to make sure that there is no elected and public employees or private contractors to the government on that board, let's just say, on that jury. And say, this is our responsibility, your responsibility to make sure that these things happen. And I want to bring up to you in Common Law 1871, there is no immunity to any public defenders or public employees. And that is TWER versus Glover, GLOVER, 467 U.S. 91 1984. See, and I mean, these things are still hold up, but you have to file these points and make sure you're filing it correctly. Because you don't want to file it as where a judge could have authority to say something. You don't want that judge to have authority. And that's the most important structure that we have is you, the people, have the authority. And that is the one thing that if we don't have authority, how are we supposed to teach our children? They don't get it. And so when it comes down to common law grand juries, and this is the one thing that people need to realize. Now, see, when it goes back to common law, there's two structures of common law. One that they say is on the United States soil, but common law was founded in England. And so the point is to realize what common law you're filing under or over or comprehending. And that's the one thing that, learning all this stuff is what our responsibility is to teach the children these things. And without us teaching the children of these things like property tax and income tax is a fraud, and that's the one thing that people got to realize. It is a fraud. And so when you look at these things that they're doing to you and I mean, I'm still amazed that I'm in ICU and my house is robbed and somebody knew exactly what they were looking for, going for. And so I have a conflict of interest if that was the local public employees or my family, which I have something I'm putting out on that here in the next few days that we'll get out on new.org and trackers. Because I have nothing to lose anymore. I've lost my family. My children are dead, so what do I care? See, that's the point. When you get things like this that happens to people, they just get to the point where what choice do you have? And I've been dead 13 times, so I'm still here. So municipalities are statute, codes, and administrative rules, and they are acted under legislative state extensions binding to all citizens or subjects to that state. So let me repeat this. So if you're a citizen or a subject to a state, you have no rights. And that includes if you're a national, you have no rights. And I was just watching a video that I don't know if I sent to the producer or not, on a gentleman that was kidnapped and held for ransom claiming he was a Moor. And so I've got an email I got to the Moors right now because this guy's claiming he's a Moor and he was kidnapped and arrested for no driver's license. What the hell are the Moors out there talking about?
Ed.
Yeah.
He was claiming he was a sovereign Moorish national.
Thank you for the correction. And see, that was the point. He used the word national, and that's the one thing that, he didn't say that, I'm a native. He didn't clarify his standing. He wanted to have a title. And he took a title. And if you watch the video, the cop says, is that what you're claiming? And he said, yes. So he arrested him. See, that's what I try to explain to people. You don't want to claim a title of nobility in any fashion. And that comes down to national, citizen, whatever. You're a native or not. It's just that simple, cross and dry. Because if you're native, what are they going to do? They're going to take a blood test. The worst comes to worst, and they have to prove it. And if they're wrong, hey, they're out of a job, and they know it. It's already gone through. Things have gone through that people don't realize what is locally going through and changes by the government or what Trump has actually done in administrative rules. Because Trump is actually working on putting this country back to we the people. But it's we the people got to stand up. And I watch all these people whine because he's opening up public land and national forest. And it's like, you people get off your lazy damn ass and file the criminal charges on the men and women that need to be filed on. Because Trump is not the one. He's caught in the middle. You got to step out of the movie and watch the production and be realistic in these things of life. And most people are not realistic in life. They live in fantasy. So let's say Trump, you file criminal charges on the board members, because Trump actually did say that in one of his campaign public announcements about 6 or 8 months ago, and said if you got a problem, you got to learn how to file on the board members. He actually came out and said it on ABC, CBS, and NBC. So, and it's like, listen to what the words that people are saying, because there's only so much that people can do before they put themselves in a bind, and they're not going to put themselves in a bind for you. Your life ain't that important to them. Your life is important to you, not them. So wake up. Trust me, I'm living that point. And you'll see some of this stuff that I'll be putting out here shortly. But remember, it doesn't matter what people are trying to say, the word person. I hear this all the time. You use the word person, that's an artificial, inanimate object. As part of the corporation of Washington, D.C. is the word person. So when you're using the word person, you are degrading yourself because you're claiming yourself as non-existence. You're claiming yourself as a corporation member of Washington, D.C. And that's a citizen, national person. And this is the one thing that is realizing what the fraud is, but you can't file on fraud when you're using those terminologies. And I know I've used some of those terminology, and that's part of the reason why I think my house was robbed, because I corrected all my stuff, and I, excuse me, came up with so many real facts that it scared people. I wasn't born yesterday, like none of us were. Well, we were born yesterday and yesteryear, but did we learn anything as we were getting older? And that's the point we got to learn. What is the education we got? What did we learn? What are we going to pass down to our children? And so these are things that we have to be realistic about. And let's not forget, every elected and public employee has to register under 1938 Foreign Registration Act, Administration Act. Foreign agents, 22 U.S.C. 611, is acting in a foreign state. Corporation, that's each and every elected and public employee contractor. That includes the public employees who are school board members, ODF&W members. It doesn't matter what you think. If you don't register, this stuff is coming to light. People are getting it. And believe me, I talk to a lot of elected and public employees, mainly public employees, and they're registering themselves because they're getting it. And so then that way they're making sure that they're claiming their retirement because it's owed to them. And I don't have a problem with that, but see if the market crashes that what they're trying to do, that means Kate Brown has to pay for it out of her personal pocketbook, and so does the Bar Association. And people, you got to realize this, that these people are liable. It's like the city council, the city mayor of my town in Toledo. They're liable with their homes and assets. They can't get out of it. If they fail to honor their oath of office, they're liable. Trust me, I know it's filed. I filed this myself. This is why I think my house was robbed while I was in ICU a couple weeks ago. And it's like, so how am I supposed to handle it? I can go crazy. And it's like the mayor said to me, hey, Ed, all of us, we yell before we come up your driveway. We show you that. And I get it. They know it. And these people I've been dealing with for 15, 20, 25 years. And so this is the point when you have a reputation or you have honor. I have one of my brothers that says to me, oh, what is that? You have no pride. Well, I don't know. It's really sucky when you're forced by your family and the local government to put your woman and the children literally on the street. And you can't shoot anybody over it. Because then that way you're the perpetrator instead of the injured party in today's democracy. And people got to realize what democracy is. Democracy is rape, rob, and pillage for elected and public employees and registered church members. That's what it really comes down to. Read your structure. It says it right in it. That's the one thing, that this stuff is not misleading to the general public. And people wonder why their cases are not going through. Well, you're filing to let a judge hear it, not a grand jury. And I get tired of all these so-called grand juries out there started up and all this. It's like the one thing that these people claim that, oh, we're a grand jury. Well, wait a minute. We have a grand jury set up in the system, even though right now it's corrupted, running like a piece of doggy-doo. We know it's corrupt, all right? But how do we stop it? It's your responsibility to stop it. And I get all this people going, I voted these people in, and I pray to God. Well, I hate to tell you what you're praying for in reality. Because it's your responsibility as a native to stand up to these things. And that's like when you're elected and public employees and servants are not doing their job, you have to file on them criminal charges. And people have been waking up because now people have been filing criminal charges across the country for the last 2 years, and they're going through. And trust me, there are other police departments that are shutting down under 501c3, and they're not in existence anymore. So, and if they're running around with license plates and tags, that's fraud. Who are they representing? Terrorists or the Constitution and the treaties? So this is the one thing, step out and look at what's going on compared to the things that we think we're living. I look at the point as I'm so blessed that I'm still here. I still remember going out. I still remember suffocating to death. Even the mayor of Toledo, Rod Cross, knows I suffocated to death because they had to haul me off twice in the ambulance for the city police department, or the city fire department, I mean. And those guys, I talked to them, and they're like, shit, man, we're amazed you're alive because there's no way you could be alive after you went through. And I've had several of them tell me that. But see, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the future of this country if people are comprehending the reality of treaties and the government constitution treaty. Because remember, all the treaties in this country came from England, the Roman Catholic Church. Oh, that goes back to the Roman days. It's all the same thing, Roman law, all this stuff. It's like the flags, the eagle on the flag, the spear, the ball, whatever you want You know, these are the representative of the districts that when you go into these courts, whatever they're flying on that flag. So when you go into these kangaroo courts or these illegal courts, you have to know what they're representing. I always love it when people say, "I want my day in court." I'd much rather case dismissed and me and the judge come up to a conclusion, let it go. And in that way, when you're traveling, you're not being harassed on the road because you got a common sense agreement with each other. You know, you don't screw with me, I don't screw with you. Hey, simple. It works that way. They want their job. Some of these men and women are honorable, but they're caught in a dilemma with the terrorists that they work with. And you got to realize that some of these people that technically are terrorists that they work with under the Trading with the Enemy Act. And Trading with the Enemy Act even comes to private contractors or public contractors, because if anybody's a 501c3, you fall right into that. People don't realize when you claim a 501c3, you are under government contract. So if you violate the Constitution in any manner, and I get tired of all these people going, "Oh, these poor abortions, give it up. The woman has a right to her body by the Constitution and treaty. Either you have a right or she has a right or no one has a right. The Bible gives you no rights. The Constitution and the treaties gave us rights. That's the native treaties. The Laramie Treaty. You got to read that. You know, this is the point: is realizing what these treaties are done. The Cherokee Nation, the Navajo treaties, what they wrote for our rights on our land, and then we got on our soil. I mean, and then we got these people that says, "Oh, we're going to give you reservations." Well, okay, you give us a reservation. Well, that's the same thing as a reservation in a hotel. I mean, a reservation. So you got to step out of this stuff and start comprehending what these words mean. See, and that's the one thing that these natives need to file on their land and claim it. That's how they're getting away with all this stuff. That's how they're getting away with on their property taxes. Because in the state of Oregon, under the original treaty, and I even sent the original Constitution out too, that says we're not to pay taxes. And that's part of the original treaty of 1846 with the British government. Even though that Kate Brown and the lawyers have altered that. In 2000, the lawyers, the Bar Association of Oregon, claimed all the land in the state of Oregon as theirs, not yours, saying you don't have a right to own anything, including your children. This is what amazes me about people who are not seeing this stuff. And I know this because I get attacked all the time, especially like what I just went through again when I'm in ICU. Well, and when I'm listening to two nurses in ICU talking about my dog, my property, my honey, going, well, we don't know what we're going to do with her. We're probably going to have to give her to the pound. And that was one of the reasons why I got up and literally unplugged myself from ICU and left the hospital. Where did they come up with this decision? Who were they talking to? What part of my family or the local government were they talking to? I mean, I'm realistic on this stuff. I'm not living in fantasy. These people know it. I file these paperwork all over the place. And you can type in my name all over, it comes up. And YouTube channels, it comes up. You know, at one point I used to have hundreds of pages on the internet until basically Obama got elected, and then they started altering that, and then the term before Kate Brown got elected, they were altering the state information. And that's the one thing you got to realize. They're altering this stuff. They're altering your Constitution under the word democracy. Democracy means rape, rob, and pillage. That means any judge, any lawyer, any Roman Catholic Church member. That means any pastor. They get away with this stuff. I mean, you're seeing these things that are coming out now that pastors and popes and all these things are raping children for 30, 40, 50 years. People were speaking up, but the government covered it up. The cops covered it up. I mean, and that's the point. That's why when it comes down to it, you have to write the criminal charges. Now, I've argued with some people who says, oh, no, only an attorney could write that. And it's like, actually, no. If you actually read the foundation of lawyers in that structure, they can only write that under tribunal law for military personnel. That's what it really comes down to. That's all they can write it up for military personnel, public employees. They can't write any charges on criminal attributes on Native Americans or even immigrants that are legal in this country. And it's reading what the real history is, reading what the real facts are. And this is the one thing that most people don't do. They don't read. They assume. And this is the problem that the children are having today. It's like, I'm sitting there out there with a gentleman the other day, and he's finally got his kids out doing work for the first time. They're 15 and 17. They never done a work. All they know is computer games. Oh, my God, they were actually doing work, and they never knew what work was. And the guy says to me, Ed, you got a point. I mean, that's what I was doing marrying the kids, is I was raising the kids so that way they knew the law, which everybody knows that when they were with me, they were learning the law. I mean, I had one student that knew more on the teacher's administrative rules than the teacher did. And the teachers were freaked out because he knew what was going on. And so this is the one thing that when you properly educate your children and you properly educate those around you, this is the future you have. If you don't educate them, and if you don't teach them to stand by you, and if it's all about me, there is no family. There's no structure. I was raised in a family that was all about me. They never gave a shit about nobody but themselves. That's a fact. Stealing was okay. Competition is like one of the relatives said to us growing up. Well, at least you know who stole from you. It's like, it's amazing when these things happen like that in your life. And they got to cover it up instead of, letting you handle it the way you should handle it without being in fear. I mean, when I ran my security company, we didn't have thieves and stuff like that. We handled it the old-fashioned way. We had a respect and honor by doing that. And a lot of people had respect and honor for us doing that, including the local cops at the time. Because they knew it. They saved them the paperwork, and they didn't want to be involved in it. And so when it comes down to the circumstances that we're living, right now you're living this stuff. Basically, we're living in hell. And I always hate these uneducated fools that says, oh, well, if the Bible says that we have to live these tribulations and all this stuff, and that's how we're supposed to get better, and it's like, no. If there was a real God, why are we living in hell? Now, I don't buy this psychological shit. Just keep a 501c3 or 501c3 5 or 9 going. That's all it is, a 501c3. And that's what most of these people do. They run nonprofit organizations and write it off. They're not protecting their children or anything because they could care less about their children. I mean, I've talked to many people over the last 30 years that says, oh, I raised my kids, they're 18, they're old enough, they're on the street, they learn what they did. But the parents didn't teach them a damn thing. They just turned 18, throw them on the street. Sort of like what England used to do when the kids turned 16, is throw them on the street. That's how a lot of young girls end up being prostitutes. So, I mean, that's the point, is they create this stuff using the religious points of view so that way they got employment, so that way they know you can kneel and pray and go, oh, forgive me, God. Well, I think a guy who rapes a woman, the woman should have a dull knife and have fun. No, you trespass on her body. She has a right to do whatever she wants to yours. So if that's the point that we have to get to that point again. I even wrote a male manifesto that even gives a man the right to sue a woman for emotional damages and everything. Women want to play that game? Men have equal rights too. So, and that's the point. It's pretty sad when we've lost reality in a lot of regards, and everybody's doing a tit for tat, and instead of going, hey, how do I make the amends for what I did wrong? You religious people don't even know what it means to make amends. All you do is talk about crap. That's what scares me when these people are educating the children. I'm a deacon. And look at the way they educate the children saying God is commerce. God was never commerce. If you actually read the Bible, the original structure, what they came out with, God was never commerce. But you can't tell the truth because we don't even know who wrote that. So we have to go by today, what's in front of our face, what we see and believe and what we learn. What we see with our eyes. That is the point. We have to learn with our eyes, with our ears, our hands. Seeing is believing. And so getting back to the structures that, a lot of us, we're not raised with. A lot of us saw it in TVs and movies. And it's amazing that the movies over the last 60 years, 70, actually going back to 23 was one of the movies a capitalistic movie, and they said the whole thing about even the Bankruptcy Act back then. Some of these movies actually do tell you the real truth and their storylines. But people, you just let it go over your head because it doesn't calculate. Because you can't think that maybe that could be real. It was in a movie. This actor is supposed to be fake. But, that's the one thing. It's like Charles Heston, when he did Moses, he wasn't going to go for what his belief and change the storyline. He wanted to make sure the bull and the burning and all that stuff was in it, like what his belief in the Bible said. And that's the point. It's your belief and your religion. That's what the Constitution gives you the right for your belief in your religion. Doesn't mean you have a right to just be on a street corner yelling, hey, there's my belief. Because the Constitution already gave you that right. You don't need to be on a street corner causing a ruckus over your belief. But people do that because they think they have a right to go out, yell, and scream under the First Amendment. Well, they do. But then again, not everybody wants to listen to their babble. And this is the point that we're going through today. What future are we going to have? Now, we're looking at right now with possibly, we're going to end up with an economic collapse, basically, because they're going to change the finances from the debt note system going back to the greenback. And trust me, these son of a guns, the Rothschilds, Fairchilds, and all these people are fighting it. And seeing that, what is his name? He just died recently. Koch Industries, David Koch, which I met the Koch brothers here in Toledo. I was introduced to them by the mayor, Sharon, and a couple other people. First time I was introduced by them, and then I got introduced to them by a few other people trying to get me to go along with their administrative rule in the Senate bill, or the House bill that Terry Thompson, President County Commissioner, got the bill passed to give public land over these timber companies because they were supposed to be paying taxes. The only taxes they were paying is called timber taxes, so it went to the schools. The land was still ours. They had to give the people, 15%, and yeah, they got the majority of the chunk for their labor to cover their labor costs, logging, trucking, putting bridges in, and that type of structure. And so we have to be realistic with those points. And a lot of us, we appreciate those bridges that were put in, so we go hunting and fishing. So, there was a lot of good things on both sides there, but now the greed has got to the point where it took over. And so with our force and stuff like this, it's up to us to start standing up for our rights. They can't sell public land, folks. It's a federal crime. They can't privatize public land either. It's a federal crime. So, and that's the one thing that we're living today is that people are not seeing all this stuff and everybody's about me, 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 and then we got this thank the creator because of Trump closing the borders and shipping out all the immigrants. And people are yelling and screaming about that. Trump has the legal and lawful right to do it. So that even goes back to the lawful native treaties. Native treaties didn't open this land and open it up so people could just walk in this land, and the United States is open for anybody who wants to come here. This has been a fantasy that's been taught by the Democratic Party. And the major point that started putting all this was Peanut Man, Carter. Because the only way he won his election by letting all the Cubans and Colombians come over to Florida and register voters. And so if you actually read the 17th Amendment, you cannot vote unless you're native. That's the one thing. Remember, the 17th Amendment was passed in what? 1800s? Revised? See, that's the one thing that, these things were passed by Congress that was lawful. Everything after the Civil War was a corporation. Nothing after the Civil War was lawfully and technically legally done, because legally is the British Roman Catholic Church structure. That's what legally means. And so when you're not paying attention to what they're doing to you and your children, that's like, it was interesting. I'm talking to a couple of nurses about the birth certificate bond. This was recently. And they knew it. They got it. And it's like, I've got a lot of people that have said to me, well, Ed, if we start enforcing these things, we're going to be out of a job. And it's like, so wait a minute. How are you going to be out of a job if it's protecting the people? Because the jobs are already lined up there. It's already protected by the people. So see, we need both sides of the system so we both can survive. And they have done it that way to put us in a trap. Because if the greenback was still intact, we would be very secure in this country, even with immigrants in this country. Because remember, immigrants can't get a job, and they cannot legally work in this country. They can't. That's federal law. And that goes back to the 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act as well. And I post the laws up on this stuff, and I pass them out to numerous people across the states. And these laws have been put in place to protect we the people, the natives. But then again, I talk to people, and they say, well, we the people, the Constitution, that's a corporation. The Constitution is a corporation. It was founded by the British government. Their forefathers. Well, their forefathers knew what they did in England and Spain. And then the natives knew what happened when they came to this country. And so they wanted to have some type of peace. And don't forget the 1836 peace flag that was developed. And yes, that is real compared to people that says, oh, yeah, that's made up. Read the history. It's filed in history. That's like Executive House Resolution 192 to pay off the debts. I mean, see, that's the one thing. They're supposed to be taking that if you're native. Elected and public employees, they got a de facto system, so they have to pay. But we, the natives, we're supposed to walk in, and here's our John Henry. The thing is paid, they get their money, and we go on. So long as that there's no personal and property and damage or injured man or woman, especially child. You're speeding down the road, you're doing 60 miles an hour to 50, or let's just say 60 miles an hour to 30. All right, you don't cause no property damage or whatever. You go in, the fine is $298 or $400 or $600. You go in, they're supposed to autograph it. Walk away. They got their money. They're not supposed to arrest you, put guns to your head, assault you, because police are private contractors. They are literally private contractors. I know. I used to be a rent-a-cop policy man myself. I worked for many corporations as a policy man, bodyguard, whatever. So, I mean, that's the reality of the world. And so, yes, when you use the word sovereign citizen, it is an oxymoron, and I used that growing up and some of the bullshit I learned until I started really reading and learning the facts. And so, and I even went that recently with the mayor of the city of Toledo. We were talking on the phone, and he's like, "Well, Ed, you've done that." And I said, "Yeah, I know I've done that in a city council meeting. I made an ass out of myself." And, and he's going, "Yeah, I know." And so, but I said, that was then. This is now. I filed my rights compared to what I did then. I was talking then. I filed my rights. I learned before I went and started filing. Okay, and I did write that in a couple instruments because I was learning and using the word inhabitant and resident, what a moron would do. Because an inhabitant is a member of Washington, D.C. Corporation. A resident is a member of Washington, D.C. Corporation. A citizen or national is a member of Washington, D.C. Corporation. You're not an American if you're doing that. You're claiming those titles of nobility and saying that you have the right to have a judge so you can throw the mercy of yourself on the court to plead your pleading. And so that's the whole point, that we want to make sure we know our rights. Our rights are more important than pleadings or a complaint. I mean, it's like I got one of the departments sent me a letter, and, well, we want you to fill this out in a complaint. And I called them back, and I said, well, I'm going to have to write this in another form as an affidavit of charges, and then I can tie it in the subject to your complaint. And the lady went to me on the phone and goes, what? And then she passed me to somebody else, and I was talking to this other guy. We were on the phone for about a half hour. First he's trying to tell me this, that, and the other thing, and I finally said, hey, here's this code, here's this structure. Am I going through this the right way? Because you have it in front of you, pull it up. So by the time we got done, he's like, well, you got it right there, and you know what you're doing. And it's like, okay, I just want to make sure I know what I'm doing. I don't want to cross the threshold, off a cliff. And so the point is, I got the other paperwork filed, and that's going through. So, but it is interesting that, I went through my house being picked by somebody who knew what they were looking for. So there's only a couple options I have with that. So I will have that release out pretty soon. Now, this is the one thing that when we go through these things, it's like with traveling. We've got this stuff dealing with you don't need a license. Make it public. Pass it around. And you can throw it on the city county wall and stuff, but pass it around to some of the little organizations around here, some of the tribes, and ask them, don't they know about this? Don't you know that you're native and you don't need this stuff? See, we got to get more people on the ground floor opening their eyes up. Once they open their eyes up, things will start moving a lot faster. See, that's the one thing that, people don't realize when Donald Trump comes out in some of his speeches. He tells you what's going on. And people ain't paying attention. Everybody wants to react. And you watch all these media, slamming Trump. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I disagree with Trump. Opening up some national forest, opening up some reservations for oil drilling. And I've talked to these natives, and I keep telling them, how come you're not filing criminal charges on the board members on the 501c3s? Oh, we can't do that. And I'm going, who's telling you to do that? And basically it comes down to their damn attorney for the tribe telling them to do that. See? That's the whole thing. Oh, religion is going to dictate to you. Remember the British registration accreditation to the King and Queen of England called the Bar Association. 1871 American Bar Association. Go read the foundation of it. American is a terminology, too, that comes under the British Corporation. And see, I'm caught in a dilemma when I write that in some of my paperwork because most people go, I'm an American, but they don't even know the foundation of what I'm talking about when I try to explain to them that American comes under Title 18, Title 42, 302. Was that 3002, British Corporation. And we do still have the filing of the one that was the last British corporation filed as the United States of America, was filed in 1927 in Florida. 30 over, basically, after 100 years, it's non-existence. So this is the point that when they file this stuff on you, is realizing what their limitations are, realizing what they can and cannot do, and filing criminal charges on them. Don't show them mercy because they don't have mercy for you. Well, I got to say there are a few elected and public employees that I wouldn't say mercy, but I'd like to say at least I like the elected and public employees that are honoring their oath of servitude. And we have to show those men and women the respect, sometimes the gratitude of what they've done. And so not all of them are bad, but we do have quite a few out there, and so they've got to deal with the ones that are bad too. And so it's a conflict they have in-house. It's like sometimes you have a conflict with your relatives in your house. So it is stepping out, looking at what these things are going on, how they're affected, and what's going on. Well, I can comprehend that, people are panicking because I've done all this filing and stuff, and people don't know where I'm at. Elected and public employees and some of my family members. But I'm done playing these games. I've been shot, stabbed. I've been through so many injuries and stuff like this, and 13 times, and 4.5 months in ICU. So I'm not bragging about it, and you guys cannot comprehend that you can't brag about stuff like that. You're just lucky and you're just grateful that you're still here. So, and that's the one point that we look at these things, and now what the next education has to be presented to the next generation. And for the generation right now who's so uneducated that they've fed their brain into these computer games. Since the late 1990s, 2000, everybody was in computer games and these fantasy stuff. They didn't go to school. They didn't educate, and the schools didn't give a shit because most of the schools they didn't teach anyways. And what is it, a third of the school days they have the fire trucks there, the police department there, coaxing the kids to teach them fear of their public employees. If you look in real history, that's exactly what Nazi Germany did. Same damn thing in the schools. Then the other thing that I find interesting, I talk to these people going, my kid goes to Walmart and they shop with a cop. They got that new program out, Shop with a Cop. And I'm going, you have to go ask permission what you're getting. And that's exactly what we're living right now. You're asking permission of what you're getting. Where are the real men and women? It is frustrating. We're living with that. It's like Kate Brown is passing bills trying to stop her own recall. And that's the one thing people need to realize. He's passing bills to stop the recall because once he's recalled and she's under indictment, she knows it. And so we got ways to stop these things. And that's by you. See, if you stand up to these things and realize what your rights are, it's like when you go to a city council meeting or you're traveling down a road or something like that, you don't fight with these people. I need your registration. I need your VIN number. I did put out something about that several years back on the old website, in Oregon Trackers, and I don't know if I put out a reversion of it on the new .Oregon Trackers yet. But questions, first thing you ask the cop, where's the emergency? Do you know why I pulled you over? Where's the emergency, sir? by federal law, which I know I posted up and around, and I think we have it on new.org and trackers, is that they can only use their lights in a federal emergency, life and death only. It's technically a federal crime if they use their lights to pull somebody over for a traffic violation. It's a federal crime, but you have to file it. And I talked to many people about it. Oh, I don't want to do that. It's too much work. And I'm not the only one. I know lots of people that I've been dealing with for 20 years that they get the same calls from people. Or they, start working on helping them and educating them. It's like I had one of the guys that I worked off and on and with for years, and he's like, Ed, you just got to charge these people, because if you don't charge them, they can't accept and comprehend when you're giving out knowledge. That's why this guy charges a minimum of $250 when he does anything. And I'm starting to see. I see his point, but the point being is that we're supposed to be educating each other. We're not supposed to be sitting there stabbing and charging people with blood, life. And that's the saddest part, when people have got to this point where it's all about commerce, me, me, me. You don't do anything without the commercial code or permission from the UCC code book. And remember, commercial code internationally didn't come into this country until 1963. Become really official where people started really using it or going to that until the 1980s. I remember that when I had my security company and they wanted me to get all this insurance and all this stuff. And I said, all I have to do is I got an umbrella insurance bond. I'm covered. Oh, you need to have this license. You need to have that. And I said, umbrella insurance bond. It's covered by everything. They didn't like that people knew that. And I wasn't the only one. I got taught that by a few elders back in the 1980s. But I learned to listen. And that's the point, that we've got to learn to listen and work with each other on this future. So, I mean, yeah, I know that, my house has been robbed more than once by the locals and my family. So, I mean, I'm caught in a dilemma, but I'm still here on my soil. Trust me. I mean, they've tried to take me out many times. And that's a fact. People know that. And everybody knows that. I talk on the street, too. So it's like, my family was saying, oh, you go have a relationship with anybody you want. Well, when you put women and children on the street, a hell of a reputation when it wasn't your fault. That's what pissed me off. These kids were learning. And my family and the locals, man, they were panicking because the kids were starting to be smart. And that's why I've instilled the rights in your brain to educate your children. Because you have to teach them about the treaties, the Constitution, and the structure of the 14th Amendment mainly. And don't forget the 13th. 17, the right to vote. Everybody needs to vote. When you register to vote, you give your rights over to Washington, D.C. And people say, oh, no, you don't. Yes, you do. I mean, sure, I've gone in the elections department, gone in and signed the paperwork on election day to put my vote in a couple times. But after the research I've done, once you do that, you have no rights. And remember, they can alter your vote. I mean, it's in the media right now. They're finding out in many states that the vote's been altered. They even have the guy from the Democratic Party that I've shared the video up on all my Facebook sites and websites out there, that they're admitting election fraud and how they do it. They even stacked the votes for Hillary. They actually admitted to it in a congressional hearing. So these people are coming out, they're putting their lives on the line in a sense too, telling the truth. So you got to look at it with the men and women that are standing up because they have convictions. They have conscience. You know, they believe in this country to be free in a Republican form of government, not a democracy. And some of these people, these Democrats, are admitting it on public hearings, dealing with a Republican form of government, not a democracy, because democracy, they already lived it. And so this is the future that we got. What are we going to do for the kids? So with that, I'm going to open up the floor, see if anybody's got any thoughts, and then we'll go on from there.
All participants are unmuted.
Any thoughts tonight? Okay, with that, we'll just say, may the Great Spirit look over you. May the Creator bless you, and may Mother Earth feed you and clothe you and take care of your newborns.
All right, thank you very much. You've been listening to the disclaimers by Ed Johnson, and hey, guess what? He remembered how to speak too. So, I guess he's in fine form today. But no, Ed puts his time, his effort in educating you guys. I mean, I just added a little bit more for my questionnaire for any police officer that either comes to my door or decides to try to stop me while I'm exercising my right to freely travel. And if they don't fill out the questionnaire, they basically admit that they are kidnapping with intent to ransom. And it even states on the questionnaire, I just added it as you
Oh,
guys.
don't forget, I did put out the structure to... Go ahead, I just want to bring up one point. We did put out the structure. I don't know if it's on the website yet or not. But you do have a right to hunt and fish, waterways and all that. I put up the hunting and fishing laws and administrative rules on it. And the federal laws that says that if they enhance your right to even fish on waterways, inlands, or the rivers or anything, you could actually file criminal charges on them.
Yeah,
Go ahead, sir.
I don't know if it's on the website yet or not. I will look into it. But as you're seeing across the screen right now for our YouTube visitors, basically the actual court cases that state codes and statutes are not law. Ed was kind enough to send this to me many moons ago, and the thing is, I added this to my questionnaire for the police officers so that they can see there is court cases against statute and codes being not law. And as a lawful bloodline native, I am not bound by the codes and statutes. I'm bound by the Constitution law. So, with that, guys, I think I'll say goodbye. And sorry if the qualities went bad and good, back and forth. It's DSL internet, and it sucks. But unfortunately, they say that is the only possible internet that's available here, which I know is bull. But hey, corporations look to screw you over. They've